Let me introduce Rick Azer here from the San Diego office of Black & Veatch, which is headquartered in Kansas, but here from Southern California today with us. Rick is focused inside Black & Veatch on smart infrastructure, smart urban infrastructure, and we're really pleased he could be here, and we've had a great opportunity to talk to Black & Veatch about some of the amazing work that they're doing around the world with cities and with those who run the basic metabolic systems of cities. And to his left is David Pogue. David is with CBRE, based in Silicon Valley, has global responsibility for the company on sustainability. You've been in many of the buildings that CBRE manages, that CBRE helps to advise both the building owners and the tenants, as well as the facility managers. And they have a very active, growing business helping those who build buildings and those who occupy buildings to think differently about the whole built environment. We're really pleased that they could both join us here today. So my job is to ask them some questions, first to give them a chance to introduce themselves and their work, and then after our discussion, we'll open the floor to you, because we've heard from you that you want an opportunity to ask lots of good questions. So let me start with Rick. Give us a chance to understand what you're doing and what Black & Veatch is doing. And by the way, while each of these discussion elements are happening, I'm following the Twitter feed. I'm not actually doing my email. So if you see me looking at the iPad, there's a reason.
All right, thank you, Gordon. As Gordon mentioned, my name is Rick Azer. I work at Black & Veatch. I want to take a couple minutes to explain my version of how we got on the journey of the smart city from the other kind of work that we're doing. I'm hoping that will set the context for some of our discussion that will happen as we get going on the panel side. So Black & Veatch is a global engineering construction company focused on critical human infrastructure of energy, water, telecommunications. Traditionally, we've been focused on very large projects, so projects like power plants and wastewater treatment facilities and like the stuff you saw in the video from Toyota, those big places where all that happens. But recently, this has been changing for us in some pretty interesting and significant ways. So a couple decades ago, Black & Veatch started to support public wireless carriers in the deployment of their 2G cellular network systems. And over time, we helped them expand and upgrade those systems from 2G to 3G to LTE. And we were helping our utility clients as well as they transitioned from analog to digital systems to support the emerging smart grid and other kinds of communications infrastructure within the utility networks. These complex power systems that we were designing became more and more complex as well with respect to data and information that's required to operate the nuances of the systems. And our clients became interested in understanding the performance and the behavior of these large complex systems. So we created an analytics platform and the capability to collect data, to report that data, and present that data in meaningful ways that helped the infrastructure maintain its best operations. So a few years ago, we started to see a major transformation in the nature of our work and also in the makeup of our clients. This corresponds pretty closely to the emergence and growth of the cloud and also to the ubiquitous manifestation of the Internet of Everything. About this time, we launched our Smart Integrated Infrastructure Initiative. We recognized that the projects that we were chasing were changing somewhat dramatically. They were getting more and more decentralized, more and more distributed, more interconnected, and more in need of the data and information that these digital systems could provide. So with the growth of renewables and the development of smart grid, our energy business was becoming more and more distributed. So as a company, we started to get involved in energy efficiency studies, renewable distributed energy systems, behind-the-meter stationary storage, electric vehicle, hydrogen vehicle, fueling infrastructure. And these became projects that were very large, but a very small distributed infrastructure across a vast region of the country, and also a lot of concurrent activity going on at the same time. So lots of multiple disparate projects all coalescing as one entity. And that's a lot like what the internet is as well. And that's what led us to the smart city. We recognized this adjacent market was blooming right under our eyes. Beyond our efforts to help utilities become more efficient and more resilient, there's a new opportunity for us emerging with the cities. And we're helping cities with the development of smart city roadmaps, with the implementation of smart city applications and initiatives. And with this work, our team has really found a new passion here and an opportunity to create a future that hadn't existed for us before. It's become a mechanism for us to leverage technology to give back to the communities in a meaningful way. Our engineering wasn't just big infrastructure anymore, but it began to exist on a more personal scale, where there's more relationship between the work that we're doing and the environment in which we're working in. And I believe this connection at that local level has become an important element to our work. It's helped us transcend from the industrial age through the information age to this kind of magical time of context and convergence. So today our client base is adapted. We're still dominated by electric and water utilities, but now we have a growing set of clients represented by some of the folks joining us on our panel and some of the ones that didn't quite join us on the panel today. So we support OEM vendors in the design and deployment of their systems and in the integration of their products into larger systems. We're supporting municipalities in the planning and rollout of smart city initiatives, and we're working more and more with commercial and industrial clients who are applying smart campus concepts to communication and distributed energy systems. So we've got a good panel here assembled today, and I'm looking forward to discussing with them how far we've come along the path of the smart city. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Fascinating. So what we're going to do is not just have the macro infrastructure view, but a little of the micro view from the standpoint of buildings and where buildings are for Dave.
First of all, I have to say that I'm delighted that I'm here and well. When I came in, and then Gordon came and he said, "Hey, this person's not here because this not here because," and I made me think about it too, because you may have read the news in the local press here that there was a Mexican restaurant in San Jose last week that had this outbreak of something awful. And the good news was that I didn't eat there. So for many ways, I'm really, really happy to be here. I was going to begin my remarks by saying, first of all, thank you to the organizers. I was not aware until just this morning that the thank you gift for the speakers is one of those fuel cell cars. I have never been so well treated as a speaker, so thank you so much. And I will be looking forward to driving it home, although I can't only get so far and then there's no fueling station. But I'll drive until it can't. I want to focus on kind of the work that we've done at CBRE, but more importantly, put it in context of kind of the marketplace and the difficulty of this storyline. We got involved in looking at our buildings and trying to make them more energy efficient about 10 years ago, when it was clear to us that many of the issues that are facing the globe today are at the nexus of, office buildings are at the nexus of these issues, whether it's resource constraint, we use a lot of energy, we use a lot of water, whether it's trash, whether it's the way we build our buildings and the stuff that we put into these buildings, whether it's transit issues, whether it's grid parity, all of the issues that we seem to be facing are focused on office buildings. And so we began thinking about this in a way to first try to make them better. But now I understand, after we've worked for 10 years to try to make individual buildings better, now we have to make them smart. To have smart cities, we cannot have dumb buildings. And I don't mean that in a negative sort of way, but I'm going to walk you through a little bit about where we are with buildings today. I was back in New York a couple of weeks ago for the Climate Week, and one of the speakers was Michael Bloomberg. And Mr. Bloomberg was speaking about the US government and the goals we have. And it was interesting to hear that we're really on a pathway to do three things to reduce carbon emissions. The first is around power plants. We're working our way toward that. Rule 111D, EPA contested and the like, but that is on a pathway to solve the problem or to reach out on the problem of power plants. The second is around transportation. Transportation is also, we're making significant advances forward in there. We saw some of the conversations today about the car of the future, but also the CAFE standards and all the rest of the things that have been done at the federal level around automobiles and transit. The third is building efficiency. So our industry is being looked at as one of the three pathways to get to our carbon-free future. A big challenge. I most recently was at an event in Southern California with Governor Brown. Governor Brown was talking about his new legislation, SB 350. SB 350 has a variety of things. He didn't get the fuel efficiency thing that he was looking from the oil that he was looking for, but he was able to get most of the rest of the things around alternative energy. He's also doing a lot of innovation around cars and around electric vehicles. The third piece of his program is to improve the efficiency of our office buildings by 50%. So we hear at the federal level, we hear at the state level. I'm on a panel right now in Silicon Valley, smart buildings. They're looking to improve the efficiency of buildings in Silicon Valley by 50%. Everywhere we look, the building industry is in the target of what needs to happen to move us forward to a low carbon economy. And herein comes our problem. We look at the auto industry. The auto industry is made up of, I mean, it used to be the big three. I don't know what it is today, the big 25. But there's a finite number of automobile companies. They're very big. They have millions of dollars, billions of dollars that they're putting into research. They are regulated highly. But there are 20, 25 automobile companies, very small universe of auto companies. There are hundreds, probably, of utility companies in the United States, a few hundred. There's probably a few thousand power plants, but it's hundreds and thousands of these that they have to be dealt with. They're being dealt again by federal governments. There are as many as 5 million office buildings in the top US cities. 5 million office buildings. 5 million owners of office buildings. And what we're finding is that there are cats and dogs and they're everywhere. One of the statistics that I heard recently about New York, also, New York, big city, lots of office buildings. The average age of the office buildings in New York is 47 years. So we have old buildings, dumb buildings, owned by owners who have a whole lot of different kinds of perspectives and outcomes and pressures and things that they're working on. And so somehow out of all the mess, we need to figure out how to take these disparate millions of buildings and figure out how to connect them all together in a fashion to make smart buildings connected into a smart city. And so therein lies our problem. And I'll take the next piece of this. And then I don't know if we're going to solve this problem today. I'm just going to dump this on you and then go get in my car. We have done some studies that we did with Maastricht University and some of the CBRE data. And I understand there's someone here from USGBC. USGBC was our partner in this research. We wanted to look to see how green buildings were diffused across the marketplace and whether or not the markets were accepting green building technology. And so we began a study that looked in 2005 through the end of 2014 in the 30 largest US markets. What this demonstrated to us is that, first of all, in 2005, nobody cared about this. Less than 0.1% of buildings had a LEED certification. Approximately 1.5% of buildings had an Energy Star label. Very small numbers. Fast forward that, and I do mean fast forward, it's only been 10 years. At the end of 2014, the numbers were dramatically different. 13% of all buildings had one or both of those designations. And those 13% of those buildings represented 40% of the square footage in the 30 top US markets. Significant when you think about how rapid the growth was that these buildings had become green buildings, technology buildings. And that's the good news. The bad news is it's all the big buildings. The leading edge marketplace buildings have moved. They're already there. So if the government now, whether it's federal government or state government, are looking to improve the efficiency of our building stock by 50%, a fair portion of the big buildings have already moved there. These buildings already have an Energy Star score of 85. They're at the top of the mark. They're probably LEED Gold. But where the problem lies is not in the big buildings, it's in the little buildings. Because this last year we did it by building size, not only market, but by building size. And what we've discovered is that every building over 1 million square feet, virtually anywhere, has one of those designations. Virtually all the buildings, certainly a majority of the buildings over 500,000 square feet, have those designations. These buildings care. Their ownerships care for a variety of reasons. Over 250,000, a preponderance of them. At 100,000 square feet, which represents most of the buildings, less than 5%. So therein lies our additional problem. It's a massive market. The people who have the capacity and capabilities and the financing and all the rest have already moved. The rest of the market, which is the predominance of the market, have not moved. And so that is our challenge, And we'll have some conversation about that as we go on today. And our other two panelists were going to answer those two questions, and I'm sorry they're not here.
Thank you, Dave. All right, so you said, and it's trending here on Twitter, to have smart cities, we can't have dumb buildings. Scott Mauvais from Microsoft just tweeted
I am
several
so
others.
afraid of Twitter.
You can't be now because you're being quoted. So here's the question for
That'll
Rick.
be the next quote. He's so afraid of Twitter.
What are the other things? So he said can't have smart cities when you have dumb buildings. What are the others? You said in your statement that smarter infrastructure is critical, and we now have the convergence of technology and design and demand for that. Are there other items on your list that you would see as obstacles that need to be blown up along the way to making a smart city happen?
Great question, Gordon. I think the same sort of scrutiny that Dave is applying to buildings apply to infrastructure as a whole. And there's a lot of focus right now on how to make energy systems more and more efficient, less carbon in the emissions from those, more distributed back at the building sites themselves, so that they can be right at the edge of where their usefulness can be most contributed. So those are some things that we're looking at, is how do you work with some of the new technologies and new energy infrastructure paradigms to couple them with the existing grid to maximize those sorts of benefits and efficiencies. And I think there's a lot of work that can happen on that going forward over the next few years. And a lot of it that will benefit both building operations and then also the network as a whole, where some of these systems can operate independently to support building operations at times that those buildings have unique needs, and that can also operate because of their connectivity to each other, to the grid, and to management software and tools as a portfolio of energy that's not necessarily an energy plant, but again, a virtual energy plant that can improve the grid as well.
So I'll ask you both, is technology an obstacle? In other words, do we have the technology that we need to enable the smart city to happen? Is it something that we need new technology breakthroughs?
Well, I can speak to the piece about the building side. My view is that we have all the technology we need to make these buildings very, very good. The technology exists. But again, what I see happening, because I live in Silicon Valley, I get 3 calls a week, and some of you, please don't call me, because I don't actually buy anything. One of the good news about my job is that I have no client facing, I have no budget, so I can't buy anything. But I get calls all the time with really great cutting edge technology to solve this problem, to solve that problem, whether it's lighting or controls or building systems. It's out there. The problem that I'm beginning to see is that they're not getting the traction, that everybody is reluctant. I have to tell you a quick story here that I am a technophobe, which is bad to say at a technology conference. But I gave an example last week about something that I had done. We built a building 35 years ago, and it was cutting edge technology. It was at the San Jose airport. And one of the things that we did there is that we did keyless entry. So we had electronic locks. Wow, it was very early. At one time, you had to actually use a key, but now you just use a card. Well, we installed this on this building with great fanfare. The problem was it didn't work. And so I was continually being called out and having to try to manually get people in and taking them through the fire escape and doing all this stuff. And it didn't work. And it was a terrible frustration because it was kind of cutting edge at the time. But what did work, we discovered, there was a slight gap in the glass doors. And somebody very clever, I think they were an early day hacker, figured out that you could take a thin metal piece of something and wiggle it and trigger the exit from the inside, the cameras that would let the doors come up. So we could not get the people in who we wanted in, but we couldn't keep out the people we didn't want. So that was my first experience with technology. And I probably am not unique in the building industry. I've had these kinds of experiences. So I will tell you that by and large, many people are afraid of technology. So we need great case studies. We need great communication of that to overcome the fear that people in our business have.
We have 2 microphones here to remind you, get yourself prepped for your questions. So technology, do we have what we need?
So my view on this is it's very evolutionary versus revolutionary, meaning that technology's evolving and improving all the time, and that when we look and see the small incremental changes that can happen that can benefit, those start to aggregate. And later on when you look back, it's really easy to sort of recast and see exactly how you got here to here and which ones provided the most value and were most beneficial. But as you're going into it, there's a lot of exploration, a lot of innovation that needs to happen, and pilots and the opportunity to use real world examples like your buildings and Pecan Street in Austin and other kinds of, let's call it real world laboratories to investigate and prove out which ones of these will be most successful.
Kaz, introduce yourself and then ask a question.
Kaz Brescher, there we go. I'm the founder of Curious Catalyst, which is an agile innovation consulting company, and I'm on the faculty at Think, and I'll be speaking a little bit later. So kind of a pre-seed, but also really want to understand to what degree, given that financial tech is starting to become more and more pervasive at a consumer level, and that's sort of a bottom-up thing that's changing as the banking institutions recognize that they need to now catch up to what we're seeing out of Silicon Valley. To what degree do you think about sort of the payment of things as an overlay in considering where cities are going with the Internet of Things, given that all cities are now being founded on ICT that facilitates efficiencies through financial tech?
I'm hoping that's aimed at you.
I'll start. So I think there's never been a better time for this intersection of communication and technology that enables things both on this, ultra holistic level, but also on the payment and the business level as well. And so things like even, and I'm going to start very small here, even the parking meters that you can put your credit card in to get your time paid that has a connection up for for payment verification and monitoring of that. That's a very small thing there, but it has a business case that works, and that sort of that combination of technology and financial capability. Not everything has to be free to get started, I guess is a way that you see. And you see a lot of new technology things start free because there's no business mechanisms in place to allow them to monetize. And those kinds of applications which are economical but still have a sort of a financial benefit are the ones I think are going to rise most quickly through this, because it will just make sense from all perspectives.
Thank you.
I have no opinion on that, thank you.
But I will just add that it would be nice if the business model for monetization did not involve more ad delivery by Google. That would be nice. John.
Yes, John Addison. I write for sites like Meeting of the Minds. So a big issue in this incredible opportunity to make buildings more efficient, moving to smarter cities. The owners, the tenants, the disconnect on who pays for it, the opportunity for firms in the middle like CBRE. Could you speak to the investments that are needed and the challenge between the owner and the tenants?
Well, first of all, I think that disconnect is a bit overstated in many ways. There are mechanisms in mini leases, and new leases are particularly being sensitive to this, where you can pass through capital costs that are equivalent to the savings of whatever it is that you put in. And these have actually been around for a number of years. Back at the same project that I couldn't get people in, I had done a lighting retrofit at one point, and we were able to use the savings to offset a capital lease that we did. And so there are ways to do the mechanism of that. But more importantly, I'm beginning to see there's more and more money on the sidelines looking to support these kinds of energy retrofits or even deep energy retrofits in buildings. And the money is coming through various ways, things like PACE financing, which is just kind of beginning to get its feet. There are literally hundreds of millions of dollars. I spoke before one of the groups just about 10 days ago, chatting about that. They were giving me some examples of some things and where they're working on this. There's a broader and broader list of things that can qualify under PACE financing. And so I think we're going to see that. But again, it's like everything else. Someone needs to try it. Someone needs to succeed to get a case study to make it more broadly acceptable. So we need, and one of the things that I've talked about, that we don't need more technology. We don't necessarily need more money. What we need is more courage. And in the end, there will be folks, and here's the other rub to this. The people who are the most likely to be the out front and be the ones who will kind of use new technology, they don't need the money. So what we need is to somehow marry the folks who need it most with the money and the technology and to move them forward in a way that makes the general marketplace comfortable about moving forward. But I think there are money, and I think that the leases and the structure are in place, and I think the money is there to solve the problem. It's a matter of connecting the two.
On this question of is the technology in place, Lev Gonik, President and CEO of One Community in Cleveland, says, level set, we are not even close to the requisite integration tools to design, build, operate, maintain, and sustain smart cities. So not everybody's in agreement on this?
Well, I didn't say smart cities. I said the technology is there to make the buildings better, because I can only talk on the micro level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've got macro and micro, but we'll come back to Lev. Thanks for that question, John. Let me just also make a point here. Jim Aloisi, who's in the room here, former CEO, former secretary of the State of Massachusetts Department of Transportation, says, how about a common way to describe and catalog building data focused on energy use and emissions as a first step towards smarter?
You know what? The lack of data, in my estimation, is one of the most difficult problems that we have right now. And I'll give a quick story. And I'm sorry that our speaker from Philadelphia is not here, because I wanted to commend her for the work that the city of Philadelphia did as one of those early cities to adopt disclosure regulations. The city of New York was the first one of a city, and it's working great. I spoke several times to the folks, the academic folks who are gathering the data. They now have troves of data that they're able now to manipulate and to use and to manage and to reach out to the right places and to find the ones that need it most. They have data because they've done this now for 3 or 4 years. I would compare that to what we did in the state of California. AB 1103 was passed about 7 years ago. It was passed and then given over to committees or someone to put into place and to figure out how to make it work. And the fact of it was it took 5 years for us to find a way to make it not work, which was basically we're going to have every building up to 5,000 or down to 5,000 square feet have to report on an annual basis their energy, but only in case you wanted to do a full building lease or sale of the building. So it wasn't public, and it would only be demonstrated at those places when those things happen. That is not disclosure. And the real estate industry, and I must say also here that I oftentimes will speak for myself rather than my company. So my views are not always shared by the real estate companies. But the real estate industry, by and large, and industry associations resist even as simple as disclosure in cities. I got really chewed out by my folks in one market, and I won't describe where, because we were supporting a legislation in that city for disclosure. And I was really attacked by our folks. How can you do this? My people don't want it. Our buildings don't want it. Our clients don't want it. It's terrible. Well, I will tell you that it passed 12-1 through the city council, fortunately. And my point to the industry is be at the table or you're going to be on the menu. Because with what happened in AB 1103 was just that. We weren't at the table and then it was unworkable. But to the point, data is what we need, because then we can understand where the gaps are, where we can put our resources best.
Rick?
So one of my colleagues from University of California, San Diego, we were at a meeting a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned this quote that I'm going to attribute to him, but I don't know if it's his quote or not, which is, we're drowning in a sea of data, thirsty for information. And data is very, very important, but the tools and capabilities to extract knowledge and value from that data and intelligence and awareness that we can then apply that to in a meaningful way is really the area that we're at now. And I think that echoes the comment the gentleman made earlier about is technology. There are a lot of great physical technology, but a lot of the work right now is at that digital layer of how do you aggregate that and make best use out of it to improve both city infrastructure and the elements of that infrastructure.
I want to make a further comment on this. Even in the places where we do get it, the EPA Energy Star and the like, we don't always get the appropriate data about the utility of that energy, the intensity of that energy. What did it create in outcomes and outputs? So that the person is exactly right. I mean, we need a smarter way of understanding how these buildings are running.
So we've got 5 more minutes. We're going to take these 2 questions together, and then you get to choose which one to respond to. So Greg Delane from UIX Global, your question first, and then George Madhavan from Singapore. First, Greg.
Thanks, Gordon. So I was just in Italy talking about smart cities and what that means. And there is this continued focus on high tech, on these technologies. And I really appreciate you all acknowledging that it goes beyond that, whether it be data. But I think we'd all agree that a smart city is intelligent in the sense that it's transparent, is accessible, and the sorts of culture hacking and civic hacking activities that are going on are the things that are really going to bring those technologies or techniques, I think is a better way to put it, down to citizens, particularly underserved citizens. And so my question is really, how do we really, the technology exists for most of what we want to do, even if it can be improved, but we're not utilizing it and integrating it the way we should to help our citizens, particularly underserved citizens. So how do we push that information and tools down to the everyday citizen?
All right, hold that thought. George Madhavan from Singapore.
Thank you. With our drive towards building more smart nations and smart cities, how prepared are we for cyber threats, cyber terrorism?
All right. So which one do you want to tackle, Rick?
Wow.
And then Dave gets the other.
I'm going to try to thread them both.
All
How's
right,
that?
good.
I don't know if this will work or not. But those are really two, not opposite, but orthogonal views of the same thing, is how do we access data and information and make usefulness out of it without it harming us situationally as well. And I think that's part of the challenge of all this, that we've got to find ways to do that. So some of it is in the opening of data and the anonymization of that data so that it can be useful without necessarily being targeted information. And as an example, they're looking across building types and sizes or meters of different sorts and understanding the behaviors of those without necessarily the personal information of what exactly that's being used for. I was just at a conference in San Diego this weekend, the TEDx exposition, and there was a gentleman there speaking of this sort of two futures that could happen, the one of open data and the one of very closed data. And the danger that we have here is that if we close data too much, it will still allow the hackers and sort of disruptors to get in without allowing the value of the information to propagate. And I think this is a real dichotomy that we'll have to deal with as the future goes.
Dave, you got the last word.
And I'll weave both of these in as well. Your concern about cybersecurity is today's concern about me not being able to get my people into the building. I mean, it's the same story 35 years later, but without the piece of metal. And so that kind of concern is what keeps part of our real estate community from not fully embracing some of these things. So again, it's going to be more to acknowledge your concern rather than give you an answer. It's somebody smarter than I is certainly going to have to find it. But your level of concern is exactly why it becomes problematic. And to your point too about communities, and I think one of the things that we have always forgotten is that none of this lives in a vacuum. A building is not just a building. A building is where people come and work and they do their progress. And what we're starting to see is that even our tenancies are looking at buildings differently. It's a place for them to have productive workplace. It's a place for them to use for recruitment and retention. It's a place where there's wellness and activities that are going on. So there's another whole movement building around the whole building industry. And I think part of that will help us understand that buildings are part of the community. And we need to invite in the community. We need to engage the community in a lot of different ways that we haven't before. Everyone has seen these all as disparate kinds of bits and parts. And I think the more quickly we can get to the point to understand that it is a community and that buildings play a role of that, transportation plays a role, all the rest plays a role, then we'll be closer to a smart city.
Well, on that note, how do we get closer to a smart city? Thank you both. We're going to try today to get closer to a smart city with your insights, and we really appreciate it. Give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.